Why is war so readily available to emerge in this world? If you are glued to the main headlines in the media stream, you will be convinced that the only significant and most impactful war going on now is the Ukrainian-Russian war. The truth is this is just one of the many wars going on Earth at the present time. War, a conflict between opposing groups involving hostilities of considerable duration and magnitude as it is defined, is now spread in almost all continents. We have official wars in Syria, Nigeria, Colombia, Afghanistan, Mexico, and in many other parts of the world. These are, for purpose of simplification, the official wars, meaning the ones recognized as such by the international organizations, but there are also unofficial wars, armed conflicts with different profiles and magnitude, with diversified motivations and modes of operation that are as well on the ground and could escalate at any moment in any place of the planet. Making a war demands an unbelievable number of resources of all types: financial, logistics, political agreements, domestic, international, and institutional and legal frameworks that take years to negotiate. Cross-border interactions, which will take years to develop, and which are necessary so war could emerge in a specific part of the world. Despite all this incredible complexity, today war seems to be activated and escalated easily, fast, powerful, in any place at any time. No years in the making to make war. War is available instantaneously. War is ready now. Why? My answer is, when an extremely complex process like war, with all its multiple players, layers, systems, tools, and dynamics, seems to take almost no time to be activated and escalated on the ground on a global scale, regardless of any part of the world and regardless any time, it is because that process, along with its main triggers, circuits, and components, is already laid out on the ground, ready to be activated. I repeat, this process is already laid out on the ground, ready not only to be activated, but wars to be escalated. But is war a modern phenomenon? We know that it's not. Earth's history is intertwined with war. Throughout history, individuals, states, or political factions have gained sovereignty over regions through the use of war. The World History Encyclopedia says that the first war in recorded time took place in Mesopotamia in circa 27,000 BCE between the Sumerians and the Elamites. Britannica accounts for a list of the major wars, and we see that in thousands of years since the Trojan War in the 12th or 13th century BCE, rarely the Earth has experienced a period where there was not a place in some part of the globe facing a major war. In the beginning, in ancient times, within every 100 years we had 1 or 2 wars. But then, as we moved into the future, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century, we start having several wars in a 100-year window. Between the 17th century and the 20th century, the world experienced an average of 31 major bloody wars every 100 years on every continent on the planet. 30 wars going on over 100 years. Wars that most of us perhaps never heard about. Did you ever hear about the First Barbarian War or the Tripolitan War? Well, it took place between 1801 and 1805 between the USA and Tripoli, Libya today. And what about the Dirty War, Guerra Sucia? Did you hear about that one? Well, only if you are Argentinian. This war took place in that country between 1976 to 1983 and killed between 10,000 and 30,000 citizens. And we could continue counting wars, hundreds of wars across history. The point is that peace has not been the norm. but war. War with some periods of peace in between. So, if war is not a new phenomenon in Earth's history, what has changed now? To understand why war exists in the way it exists today, it is necessary to view it as a single multilateral dynamic complex system that envelops, pay attention to this word, envelops the whole world. We are used to seeing wars emerging separately here and there, almost randomly. But war is not random and cannot be viewed as a separate part or separate parts or events emerging here and there. War is a system and is global. A system entrenched and deeply rooted in our planetary culture and fed in many ways through education, media messages, institutional processes, and corporate and political organizations, and absorbed consciously and unconsciously by each individual and their communities in the overwhelming part of the world. Through this process of absorption, people are indoctrinated to accept war as normal and even desire it, if necessary, to achieve a strategic goal. As it is explained exactly in the discipline of systems thinking, within the context of a system, all the components are interrelated, and when there is a change in one component of the system, that change affects the whole. Furthermore, the system is not the sum of the whole, but exhibits its own behavior. Looking at the process of war as a system in this regard, we see that war exhibits its own independent behavior, meaning that remains operational or ready to be activated, regardless of what is going on in the world. To understand war as a dynamic independent system, it is necessary that we look briefly at the components that constitute that system. The system of war at the present time presents the following components. Component 1. War logistics. The providers of tools and facilities. These are the players that provide the concrete operational tools and facilities to make war possible. They cover all the domain available: air, space, land, sea, and cyber war. And these are land vehicles, tanks, trucks, missile launch platforms, mobile platforms, among others. In the air, aircraft, UNAV, kilodrones, missiles covering the airspace available across countries. In the sea, we have carriers, submarines, and war vessels across all oceans and seas. The human component, troops displayed, infantry, pilots, hackers for cyber war. The research defense labs or biolabs spread around the world in many countries. Other space machines, like satellites for military operations and other technologies. Cyberspace with artificial intelligence, computer networks, and cyber warriors. Nuclear facilities spread around the world. Technologies and new war tools, for example, the exoskeletons, a wearable robot to increase soldiers' peak performance. And finally, the war propaganda, mainstream media, TV, radio, press, content and communication systems, social media, that is, all the news and content that keep us in alert state or fear regarding a specific war or war in general. Component 2. Conceptual, philosophical, ideological, and political frameworks. These are the products of organizations that provide the concrete operational and institutional moral consensus, credibility, acceptance, and legitimacy. We could call it the ethos of war among countries, governments, nations, and organizations to make war possible. And these are the political agreements, broad ones, domestic and international, between nations or between multilateral organizations. The military intelligence doctrines, national and international, like the national strategic concept or strategy of each country, and the multilateralism doctrines. The cooperation agreements, pacts, bilateral and international regarding defense and foreign policy, among other domains. The international treaties, laws and legal frameworks in justice, foreign affairs, diplomacy, defense, cohabitation, immigration, finance, etc. And the economic treaties, economic sanctions and restrictions or punishments against countries, organizations, companies, or specific individuals targeted in the context of war. Component 3. The institutions and power groups. These are the ones who produce and use the conceptual, philosophical, ideological, and political frameworks and tools mentioned before, and that benefit as well from them, by enforcing them on the ground or applying them to the players in conflict, people, nations, or organizations. And these are the national governments and relevant ministries like defense, finance, foreign affairs, immigration, and supporting policies. The multilateral organizations like the European Commission, the United Nations, and its agencies like the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, etc. The NATO Alliance, the International Court of Justice, etc. Power groups, formal and informal, with powerful, influential figures in their membership, like the World Economic Forum, the Council of Foreign Relations, among others. Component 4. Civil society. These involve all the civil players in the industry, business of war, related to war, feeding war, or supporting war, and those who are used as instruments by the political components and entities previously mentioned to make war operational, and that benefit from war as well. These are the military industry complex, aerospace and defense, the technological business in computer robotics, biology, nanotechnology serving this industry of war, the terrorist religious groups, the private security companies, the paramilitary companies and organizations, the guerrilla armies, the financial sector with banks, asset management funds, and other institutions, the media conglomerates, the procurement agencies, and the lobbying agencies, think tanks with policy advisors in defense, diplomacy, etc. Component 5. War incubators. These are those players or processes that voluntarily or involuntarily feed the war machine in any form, being either the victims or the protagonists of the war system. These are, once again, the lobbying groups, the military compulsory service in each country, the mercenaries, private security companies, and informal groups. The historical background, cultural perspectives of countries regarding other countries, that is, the country's difference based on resentment and unresolved issues that laid the ground for present or future armed conflict among them. The military education and training, that is, the military academies and schools. Child soldiers around the world. The human trafficking. The national troops and militaries. The multilateral agreements on defense, like the European Strategic Compass. The collateral damages of war inflicted worldwide, like the environmental damages, immigration, emigration, refugees and refugee camps, the destruction of vital infrastructures in several countries targeted by war, defense budgets from countries and multilateral institutions, And finally, component 6, money. Money encompasses and goes across all the previous institutional components and process mentioned. Without money, war will never exist on a global scale. Money for war comes from many origins, both institutional ones and from hidden streams and actors, going directly from the official sources towards the war suppliers, but also circulating in the skies through the economy of countries, completely hidden from public scrutiny and far away from the collective awareness of the citizens of the world. And so these are the 6 institutional multilateral components that form the multilateral dynamic system that encompasses and enchains the whole world. They make the global system of war. This global multilateral dynamic system is built in a way that it's made to feed itself, to supply itself with all that it needs, and in so be, this system exists so war can never be eradicated, but rather instead persist, escalate, or be ready to be activated. This is how our world has turned itself into a global machine for war. And as long as this machine is in place, globally and systemically, our world will never find any lasting peace. Thank you for watching.